Hi, thanks for joining us today. I'm Craig Davis, the editor of Casino Beats. We're here in the latest in our Pathways series, for which I'm delighted to say I am joined by Adam Noble, who's the co-founder and chief business development officer at PlayStar. Thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Absolute pleasure, Craig. Glad to be here.
So with these Pathways series, we kind of like to delve into the story behind the person. A lot of people might know you in the industry, but they might not necessarily know your journey to where you are today. So to kick things off, we'll go right back to before gambling, and we'll ask, could your life and career have taken any other paths into any other industries than the one you currently find yourself in now?
Yeah, look, great question, and I think the answer to that is an absolute yes, and also that it has taken several different twists and turns over time. I suppose going right back to the start, coming out of school, I joined the Australian Air Force, which meant that as a 17-year-old, I was leaving my home state of Tasmania in Australia and off to live a life of adventure in the Australian Air Force. And I moved around Australia for several years. Within that job, I was essentially working on fighter aircrafts, FA-18 fighter planes, and I did that for several years until I got itchy feet, and decided that I wanted to head overseas. So I pretty much packed up my life in Australia and off I went. First stop was Dublin, Ireland, and having just spent 8 years working on aircraft, I thought that would be a good place to find my next job, which would be working on aircraft out of the Dublin airport. So I did that, having taken my 8 years of experience, and I did that for a further 2 weeks in Dublin before I resigned from that job, and I've never touched an aircraft again. So from that point, being a backpacker essentially at the time, I went and did what a lot of other backpackers did, and very diverse and interesting bunch of folks working on building sites of various projects across Dublin. It was right at the height of the Celtic Tiger, and you had all these different nationalities and different professions, from scientists, bankers, that had just sort of come together to essentially fill up their travel coffers and be able to travel around Europe. So I did that, and I really enjoyed living over this side of the world, and thought I want to keep doing this. So I went home to Australia for a brief period, and then came back and set up life again in London. This time around, I thought I best tap into the technical skills that I'd learnt from 8 years in the Air Force. And at the time, the rail industry in the UK was screaming out for skilled people, and several of my friends had entered the rail industry. Essentially, transferal of technical skills, and so that's what I did. And I was working across various projects across London, Scotland, in the rail industry. But then that led to towards the end of that, more project management. So then it was time to pack up shop again. I mean, you asked the question about could my life or career take different turns? Well, these are all the different turns that they've taken. So I was back to Australia, and sort of leveraging that, the project management experience. I found myself in a company called Skybridge, and Skybridge was a very innovative field services company. Essentially, what Skybridge would do would manage the logistics between a piece of equipment, technical equipment, a technician, and the customer, to essentially get a piece of equipment, a technician, to a customer's home to do an installation of some sort of technical equipment. So that could be satellite broadband, that could be solar PV, that could be a digital switchover box. So I built up a division within that company for the digital switchover, which was changing television sets for essentially pensioners and folks that weren't able to do that themselves from analog to digital and managed that project. Built quite a big team up underneath me in doing so. I resigned on the Friday and walked back in on the Monday, consulting on various projects, which really suited me and suited the company, and we achieved some great results there in establishing new business units and predominantly establishing those units to go into a market to disrupt in some way. So see an opportunity to come in, change the business model, get one step ahead of the competitors or the incumbents that were in those markets, and achieve good results. So that then really led into I've always had a sort of commercial underlying to most of the roles that I've been involved in, and that led into more business development, and then I really built on those commercial skills in bringing new clients into the business. Some of the largest companies within Australia we were doing business with. So then everything was going swimmingly in Australia, and my wife and I decided it's time to pack up shop and move to Sweden. And among others, one place I interviewed for, and there's quite a market difference between the iGaming industry and where I interviewed for, and that was it escapes me now. Disinfecting. It was a disinfecting company for hospitals. So you're taking the hospital equipment, and it goes down and gets disinfected in the machines in the basement. So that was one that I interviewed for as a sort of a project management type role. But the other industry I found here in Växjö, which the name seemed to be popping up all over the place when I was Googling this little town, and that was a company by the name of Play and Go. So I'm like, what is this Play and Go? What are they about? And I started to research them on online slots. Okay, wow, this is interesting. How does that work? Because coming from Australia, where online casino is very much forbidden, hadn't had that much exposure to online casino. So a couple of Skype interviews, and when I touched down over here, I went in and met the folks, and a month later, I found myself in the iGaming industry.
And how did you find that transition? Like you say, from a place where online casinos very much not a thing, to going over to Sweden and finding yourself in Play and Go, and how did you find that transition, and what was the path from Play and Go to where you find yourself currently?
So coming into Play and Go, I was head of what the role was called, head of business areas, which was essentially monitoring or managing the commercial aspects of each business unit or product, which then led into becoming the head of sales and business development for platform services. So although it was very, very much a different product and very, very much a different industry to what I'd been involved in before, essentially the same skill set applied, in the sense that you needed to understand the value in the product that you're offering. You needed to understand how that applied to the companies that you were trying to offer that product to, and or understand their problems and work out what it is that I've got that's going to solve a problem of a potential client. So the skill set, the underlying skill set was there to essentially walk into the role and be fairly comfortable. Having said that, of course, I needed to get my head around the terminology within the business. GGR, NGR, licensing, regulation, all these types of things. And funnily enough, when I left Australia, the industry I was working in was very heavily regulated from the occupational health and safety perspective. A lot of government bureaucracies within the government contracts that we were rolling out. And I said to myself, the next place I land, I want to be free of that regulation. I want to be free of that red tape. It turns out I didn't quite achieve that goal. Probably going to one of the more regulated industries, globally, certainly from a digital perspective. From Play and Go to where I am now, I kind of say that I guess I did my iGaming apprenticeship at Play and Go. It was a great place to a great company, a great place to learn a lot about the industry. But I spent a couple of years there when there was a restructure and a division got purchased out of the company, and I decided that I would expand my wings now and look a little further afield. I didn't look that much further afield because I ended up at Yggdrasil, another Scandinavian or Swedish gaming company, another great company. But probably I only spent a short time there for two reasons. One, I started there on the 10th of March, 2020. So I went up and met Andrew Pegler, who's still there today, and we spent about a day in the office before the communiques were coming in saying, all the offices are shutting down from next week. All travel is cancelled, because it was the 12th of March that the world essentially went into lockdown. So I was fortunate, and I think the kicker was, I got to spend some time in person with these people, where I met Joel Wickel, who I talk about Växjö being the home of Play and Go. Well, Joel Wickel was the founder of Boss Media back in the late 90s, and Boss Media was, for want of a better term, an early unicorn in the industry. Not dissimilar to a Playtech of today or something like that. And out of Boss Media spawned a real tech hub here in Växjö. The founders of Play and Go were working for or consulting to Boss Media in the day, and so I'd heard about Boss Media quite a lot, and I went in and met with Joel, and Joel had an objective that to start an online casino in the US, and that's kind of where the journey started, where I am at PlayStar today.
So we'll take a step out of the path we've been on so far. Let's look at PlayStar. When it's a Q3 launch, we've heard, so it's imminent. How are things at PlayStar Towers at the minute? Excitement, nerves, mixture of everything all into one. How do things stand at the moment?
We kicked off this project in August 2020, as I say, meeting Joel, and at that point there, we had a name in PlayStar, and we needed to work like mad in order to understand USPs, to understand the market, to essentially build put together the building blocks of our brand. And the reason why we needed to pull those together so quickly was to pitch for market access in the US. We are 100% North American facing brand. And then, of course, in any US market, you need to achieve market access. So we were scurrying like mad to bring in different consultants to help sort of build our story, and we did that, and we achieved from being founded to achieving market access in New Jersey. We did that on a timeline of about 4 months. At that point, we then realized, right, we need to hire a team to bring some people in that actually know what they're doing in this space, and we hired some fantastic people into the business, and some of the biggest names in the industry. And they've now gone about, taking the initial vision and positioning and USPs, and turning that into a product, ready for launch. So we moved at a rapid pace, and we are now in the final throes of our achieving our transactional waiver in New Jersey. But out of the mountains that have been moved from the team and the senior management team and the team, and all of our suppliers and so forth to bring all this together, it's these small pieces at the end, that are almost exponential in effort to get over. But we're just about there, and we're on track for achieving our transactional waiver in New Jersey, any day now, which means we'll go into soft launch and then full launch, in the approximate coming month or so. So it's been an amazing journey, and we're all very much looking forward to launching, and really seeing the impacts of what we're bringing to market by way of a real focus on personalization, customer engagement, customer experience, but not just saying those words, but actually really layering our product experience, the experience with our brand across those three pillars. So when you come to PlayStar.com in New Jersey and other US states as we'll be launching, you really get an immersive feeling that you're playing at an online casino, and you're being serviced while you're there.
And have you afforded yourself to look elsewhere across the US? I mean, I know you've not launched yet, as we've just spoke about. It's imminent. But what's the pathway beyond New Jersey? I mean, you could be forgiven for saying Pennsylvania, kind of Michigan is kind of, you could say, a common route. Is this a route you're looking? Are you looking further north? We've seen all the hype of Ontario since launch. What have you planned the strategy beyond New Jersey, kind of thing?
You mentioned it there. So Pennsylvania, excuse me, Pennsylvania. We have a market access there through Caesars, and we plan to launch there in the latter part of this year, somewhere around November, December. We are currently deep in the licensing process there with the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. So that will be the next sort of cab off the rank. In many of the markets across the US right now, where sportsbook is operating, online sportsbook, roughly half of the US. There's only half a dozen markets that have regulated online casino. Now, in markets that companies like Caesars have a presence, they are doing market access agreements for future iGaming, which is on the cusp of regulating. So we have secured Indiana there, so that is looking like it might be the next market to regulate. And then we have a pipeline of several other states that we are deep in the process of securing market access. So yeah, we certainly have plans further afield than New Jersey, and we'll be announcing many of those in the coming weeks and months. You mentioned there north of the border in Ontario. We're certainly keeping a very close eye on Ontario, and watch how that pans out over the next several months. It's certainly something on our radar. You've obviously got a market there that has historically had dozens and dozens of brands in there without sort of any sort of restriction of access into that market. So it's a bit of a different landscape to the US, where the market access is essentially restricting the number of brands. And whilst that's a big barrier to entry, once you're inside of that market, you're not looking over your shoulder at the next 50, 100 brands that are going to come in. So slightly different dynamics between those markets that we're continually assessing, and we'll decide whether we enter or not.
And to close, a very familiar question that I always close with on these features: if you could tackle the 100 Club or the wider industry with one question on any issue, what would that be?
Look, I think it'd need to be around responsible gambling and ensuring that responsible gambling is a safe place for your players to come and play and be looked after. I mean, that needs to be, I think, the major question on everybody's lips as to how do we do that? Because it's only when you're achieving that that you're in a stable industry where the regulator is appeased by the regulation that they've put into place, that it's working, that there's the least amount of harm being done, people are being looked after, trends are being identified, so on and so forth. So I think it'd be how do we continually raise the bar in that area without, of course, ruining the experience for the player and or the businesses that have made those investments to come into the industry and provide this entertainment.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for your time today, Adam. It's much appreciated.
Thanks very much, Craig. It's been great.